The world of Vornis was not like Earth. The sky was always covered with thick gray clouds and the air smelled of metal and oil. Huge towers of steel rose from the ground, glowing with blue light. The sound of machines never stopped. Inside one of these towers was the Helion factory, the biggest production center in the colony. It built power engines, ship parts, and plasma tools used all across the human settlements in the galaxy. Among the thousands of workers in the factory was a young mechanic named Rian. He was not famous, not rich, not even well known by his co-workers, but he was known for something rare, his kindness. Every morning before sunrise, he walked through the cold streets to reach the factory. His clothes were plain, his boots worn out, and his hands rough from years of work. Yet he always smiled when he greeted the guards and the cleaning staff. Rian worked in Section 3, where damaged ship engines were sent for repair. The noise there was loud and the heat from plasma furnaces was hard to bear. But Rian never complained. He repaired old engines with patience and care, using tools that most workers ignored because they were outdated. He said to himself that every machine deserved respect because it served people faithfully until its last spark. His small room was in the lower part of the colony, near the power drains. The walls were metal and the lights flickered every night. He had only a small table, one chair, and a narrow bed. The window showed nothing but smoke rising from the factory towers. Yet Rian never felt hopeless. He always said that as long as he could work, he could build something better one day. His salary was small, just enough to buy food and some parts for his old maintenance drone, which he called Nilo. The drone was his only friend. It followed him everywhere, blinking its tiny blue eye and beeping softly when Rian talked to it. Sometimes Rian joked that Nilo was more loyal than most people. One evening, after a long 12-hour shift, Rian received his weekly payment through his wrist chip. It was not much, but enough for food and rent. He walked through the crowded streets toward the market zone. The air was filled with the sound of vendors selling machine oil, dried fruit, and recycled tools. Rian stopped near a small food stall where he usually bought bread. As he waited, he noticed something unusual near the corner of the street. A woman and a small child sat beside a wall, shivering from the cold wind. Their clothes were torn and their faces looked tired. The woman held a broken data pad with a small sign made from paper that read, "No food, no home." The little boy beside her was trying to hold a small heating crystal that had already lost its glow. Rian stood there for a moment. He had only enough credits for himself, but when he looked at them again, he felt something inside him move. He remembered the days when he was younger, when his family had nothing after a factory accident destroyed their home. A kind old worker had helped them back then. That memory was still warm in his heart. He walked closer to the woman and crouched down. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. The woman looked up in surprise. "We are fine, sir. Please do not worry. My husband worked at the port. He got hurt. I'm trying to find a job, but no one hires with a child." Rian looked at the boy. He was maybe 6 years old, staring at the glowing wrist chip on Rian's arm with wide eyes. Rian knew that look. It was hunger mixed with hope. He smiled gently. "Here, take this. It's not much, but it should help." Before the woman could say anything, Rian transferred his entire week's salary into her datapad. Her eyes widened in shock. "Sir, please know you need this." Rian shook his head. "You need it more than I do. I can work again tomorrow. You both need to eat tonight." The woman covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. The boy smiled shyly and whispered, "Thank you, mister." Rian only nodded and stood up. "Take care of each other. Better days will come." He turned and walked away without looking back. The streets were colder now, but something warm glowed inside his chest. His belly was empty, but his heart was full. Nilo beeped softly beside him, and Rian patted the small drone. "We'll be fine, Nilo. We always are." That night, Rian reached his room late. He had no food left, so he drank water and sat near the window. The city lights flickered like stars trying to shine through smoke. He closed his eyes and rested his head against the metal wall. He did not know that someone had been watching him the whole time. Inside the upper tower of the Helion factory, in a large office filled with holographic screens, stood Mr. Darren, the factory's owner. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen both wealth and war. He was known as a man of rules, not emotions. For years he had managed the factory with strict discipline. People said he cared only for profit, but tonight he had seen something that disturbed his calm. The surveillance system that covered the colony streets was linked to his main office. He had seen Ryan's act of kindness through one of those feeds. A worker giving away his entire pay was rare on Vornis. Darren replayed the scene again, watching Ryan's expression. There was no hesitation, no show, just simple kindness. He leaned back in his chair, thinking, why would a man with nothing give away everything he has? He murmured to himself. His assistant, a young technician, looked confused. Should I flag the worker for misconduct, sir? Transferring credits outside the factory's approved system can be a violation. Darren shook his head. No, leave it. I want to see what he does next. The assistant nodded and left quietly. Darren sat alone, staring at the frozen image of Ryan walking away into the night. For the first time in years, he felt something he could not describe. It was not anger or curiosity. It was something like respect. The next morning, the factory was busy as usual. Sparks flew, machines roared, and workers shouted instructions across the assembly lines. Ryan arrived early, as he always did. He cleaned his tools, checked the repair logs, and began fixing a damaged energy core. His hands moved quickly, steady and sure. The supervisors walked past without paying attention, but Ryan did not care. He worked for the joy of creating, not for praise. Around midday, a metallic voice echoed across the section. Mechanic Ryan, report to the main office immediately. All heads turned toward him. Workers whispered among themselves. No one from Section 3 had ever been called to the main office before. Most who went there returned with a termination notice. Ryan wiped his hands and looked at Nilo. Looks like it's our turn, friend. He took the lift to the upper floors. As the doors opened, he stepped into a world he had never seen before. The air was cleaner, the lights brighter, and the silence heavy. At the end of the hall was a large door marked Director Office. He hesitated, then knocked. A calm voice said, "Enter." Ryan stepped inside. The room was wide, with glass walls showing the whole city below. In the center stood Mr. Darren, wearing a dark coat. He turned and looked at Ryan carefully. "You are Ryan from Section 3, Darren said. "Yes, sir," Ryan replied politely. "Did I do something wrong?" Darren studied him for a moment. "Why did you give away your salary yesterday?" Ryan blinked, surprised. "You saw that? I see everything that happens in my factory and the colony it supports," Darren said slowly. "Answer me, why did you do it?" Ryan thought for a moment before replying. "Because they needed it, sir. I can always earn again, but maybe they could not last another night without help." Darren's expression did not change, but his eyes softened slightly. "You do know that what you did could leave you hungry?" Ryan smiled faintly. "Hunger passes, sir. But helping someone stays." For a long time, Darren said nothing. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. Finally, he said, "Go back to work, and do your job well." Ryan nodded respectfully and left the room, confused but relieved. After he left, Darren stood near the window and looked down at the endless lines of workers. "Maybe I have forgotten something important," he said quietly. The old words of his father came back to him, words he had ignored for years. A factory runs not only on power and metal, but on the heart of the people inside it. That evening, Ryan repaired a broken plasma conduit that others had declared useless. He stayed late, humming softly as sparks danced in the air. Nilo floated near him, recording his work. He didn't know that Darren had ordered the cameras to stay focused on him again. From his office, Darren watched as Ryan finished the impossible repair and brought the conduit back to life. The blue light glowed steadily, stronger than before. Darren leaned back in his chair and smiled faintly. "A man who gives his salary away and still works like this," he whispered. "Maybe he is the one I have been looking for." Outside, the rain began to fall again over Vornis, washing the dust from the streets. In a small room in the lower district, Ryan sat beside his little drone, sharing a small piece of bread he had received from another worker. He did not know that his life was about to change forever. The next morning began like any other on the planet Vornis. The heavy gray clouds hung low over the city, and the sound of machines filled the air. The Helion factory started its usual rhythm. Conveyor belts moved, welders sparked, and the deep hum of engines echoed through the metallic corridors. Ryan reached the factory gates early as always. His small maintenance drone, Nilo, floated beside him, flashing a cheerful blue light. Ryan smiled at the guards, who nodded back politely. Most workers walked past him without saying much, but a few waved because they knew him as the man who never refused to help anyone. Inside Section 3, Ryan began his day by checking the repair list displayed on the holographic wall. There were several damaged engine cores, a few broken coolant units, and a malfunctioning cargo lift. He sighed softly but didn't complain. Work was work, and he was thankful to have it. He rolled up his sleeves, grabbed his tools, and began repairing the first engine. Hours passed quickly. The air was warm and filled with the smell of burnt metal. Ryan's hands moved steadily, his mind focused. His world was small but peaceful. Just him, the machines, and Nilo's soft hum. Then something unexpected happened. A loud voice echoed through the section's speakers. "Mechanic Ryan, report to the main office immediately." The sound froze everyone around him. The workers stopped what they were doing and turned toward him. One of them, a tall man named Bren, whispered, "You? The main office? That's never good." Another worker frowned. "Maybe you broke something." Ryan tried to smile but felt uneasy. He had been there once before, and it was strange enough then. Why would the factory owner want to see him again so soon? He cleaned his hands, told Nilo to wait, and walked toward the lift. His heart was beating fast as the lift rose higher and higher, leaving behind the noisy lower levels. When the doors opened, he stepped into silence. The upper floors were clean and polished, with bright white lights and glass walls that showed the vast city below. It felt like a different world. At the end of the hallway stood the same door as before, director office. Ryan hesitated for a moment, then knocked softly. "Enter," came a calm voice. Ryan walked in. Mr. Darren was standing near the window again, hands behind his back, looking down at the factory below. Without turning around, he said, "You are early, as always." Ryan bowed slightly. "Good morning, sir. You asked for me." "Yes," Darren replied, finally turning to face him. His sharp eyes studied Ryan carefully. "You have been working in Section 3 for how many years?" "Almost 6, sir. And in those 6 years you have never been late, never complained, and never damaged company property. Is that correct?" Ryan nodded, unsure where this was going. "I just do my job, sir." Darren leaned against his desk. "I watched you again last night. You repaired an old plasma conduit that 3 senior engineers declared impossible to fix. How did you manage it?" Ryan looked a little embarrassed. "I listened to the sound it made, sir. Every machine tells you what's wrong if you listen carefully. The parts only needed time and patience." Darren raised an eyebrow. Time and patience. 2 things most people lack. He walked closer. "Tell me something, Ryan. Why do you care so much about these machines?" "They are just metal and circuits." Ryan smiled faintly. "Because they work hard, sir. They never complain, even when broken. They remind me of people like us. If treated kindly, they can serve again." Darren stared at him silently for a long time. Then he said, "Go back to work for now. But tomorrow, report to Hangar 9 at sunrise." Ryan blinked in surprise. "Hangar 9, sir? That area's restricted." Darren gave a small nod. "Not anymore. You will work there starting tomorrow. Bring your tools." Before Ryan could ask why, Darren turned back toward the window, signaling the conversation was over. Ryan left the office, confused and curious. The workers in Section 3 stared at him as he returned. Bren whispered, "So? What happened? Are you fired?" Ryan shook his head. "No, he told me to go to Hangar 9 tomorrow." The workers gasped. "Hangar 9? That place has been sealed for years. Some say it's where the failed ships are stored." Ryan just shrugged. "I don't know. I guess I'll find out." He returned to his work, but his mind was full of questions. Why would the owner send a simple mechanic to a restricted hangar? What was inside it? That night, Ryan could not sleep. He lay on his narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Nilo hovered nearby, humming softly. "What do you think, Nilo?" he said with a tired smile. "Maybe it's just another repair job." The drone beeped twice, as if unsure. Ryan laughed quietly. "You're right. I shouldn't worry. Whatever it is, I'll do my best." The next morning, Ryan woke before dawn. He packed his tools, cleaned his uniform, and left early. The streets were quiet, the metal ground wet from the night rain. When he reached the factory gates, he saw a security bot waiting for him. It scanned his wrist chip and said in a metallic voice, "Authorization granted for Hangar 9. Follow the red line." A glowing red path appeared on the ground, leading him through corridors he had never seen before. As he walked, the air became cooler and the lights dimmer. Finally, he reached a massive door with the number 9 painted in faded white letters. The door slid open with a hiss. revealing a vast chamber. Ryan froze in awe. Inside, standing in the center, was a half-built starship. It was enormous, its surface covered with strange energy circuits that pulsed with dim blue light. Robotic arms hung from the ceiling, silent and still. Dust covered most of the floor, but the ship looked alive and like a sleeping giant. He stepped closer, his eyes wide. "Beautiful," he whispered. A voice behind him said, "It is called Orion." Ryan turned and saw Mr. Darren walking toward him. This time the owner was not wearing his usual coat. He had on a work jacket and gloves like an engineer. This ship, Darren continued, was a secret project, designed to travel beyond the known routes to reach systems no one has ever seen. But it failed. The engines could not stay stable. The scientists gave up. Ryan looked at the ship again. "Why show me this, sir?" "I am only a mechanic." Darren smiled slightly. "You are more than that. You understand machines in a way others do not. You treat them like they matter. I want you to work here. Try to find what the scientists missed." Ryan was speechless. "Sir, I don't have advanced training." Darren raised his hand. "I am not asking for theory. I am asking for heart. You repaired a broken plasma conduit that experts declared dead. Maybe you can do the same for Orion." Ryan felt both fear and excitement. "I will try, sir, but I can't promise anything." "That's all I ask," Darren said. "Try." From that day, Ryan's life changed completely. Every morning he worked inside Hangar 9, studying the strange engines of the Orion. The technology was unlike anything he had ever seen. The ship's systems responded oddly, almost like they could feel his presence. When he touched the control panels gently, the lights flickered softly as if greeting him. Days turned into weeks. Ryan lost track of time. He ate in the hangar, slept beside the engines, and talked to the ship as if it were alive. "You're just tired, aren't you?" he would say while fixing an energy node. "Don't worry. I'll get you flying again." The ship's lights blinked slowly as if listening. Mr. Darren visited often, watching quietly from a distance. He saw how Ryan worked with patience and care, never rushing, never shouting at the machines. The engineers who had once failed to fix Orion watched too, whispering among themselves that the poor mechanic was wasting his time. But Ryan ignored them. One evening while he was working on the main energy conduit, something strange happened. The lights in the hangar flickered and the ship's core began to hum softly. Ryan stepped back surprised. The readings on his scanner rose slowly, showing that the power flow had stabilized for the first time since the project began. Mr. Darren, who was standing near the control deck, stared in disbelief. "How did you do that?" Ryan smiled faintly. "I didn't force it. I just let it breathe." "Let it breathe?" Darren repeated. "Yes," Ryan said simply. "Machines are like people, sir. They don't like to be forced. They work better when you understand them." For a moment, Darren said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. "You may be right. The success was small, but it was a beginning." The next day, the news spread quietly among the staff. The poor mechanic had done what experts could not. But Ryan didn't care about fame. He only cared about helping the ship awaken again. Late that night, after everyone left, Ryan sat on the floor beside the ship. Nilo hovered near him, recording data. The hum of the Orion filled the hangar, steady and calm. Ryan looked up at the massive structure and whispered, "We're going to make you fly again, my friend." And deep within the ship's core, a faint blue glow pulsed in rhythm with his words, as if the ship heard him and believed it too. Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. Ryan's life now revolved around the massive hangar that housed the mysterious ship, Orion. He had grown used to the silence of the space. The air smelled of oil and energy, and the blue glow of the ship's circuits gave the hangar a strange, peaceful beauty. Every morning, Ryan arrived before anyone else and began working quietly. The other workers often watched him with curiosity. They were engineers, technicians, and scientists, all highly trained, yet none of them could make the Orion system stable. Ryan, with his simple tools and calm patience, was slowly doing what they had failed to achieve. Some admired him, some doubted him, and some even envied him. But Ryan did not care. He only cared about the ship. The Orion had started to respond to him in ways no one could explain. When he touched the panels, the energy readings improved. When he spoke softly, the lights brightened. The ship seemed to trust him. He often talked to it while working, saying simple things like, "We're getting there, you just need a bit more time." Mr. Darren visited every few days. He would stand on the observation deck watching silently as Ryan worked. Darren's eyes no longer looked as cold as before. Something in Ryan's quiet determination reminded him of the old days when humans built their dreams with their hands, instead of depending only on machines. One day, after hours of testing the plasma conduits, Ryan finally managed to make the core energy flow smoothly. The room filled with a soft humming sound that echoed like a song. He smiled proudly and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "See, Orion, you're healing." Just then he heard footsteps. Mr. Darren entered, followed by two senior engineers. "Is it true?" one of them asked, staring at the glowing core. "You actually stabilized the energy flow?" Ryan nodded. "It's not perfect yet, but it's steady. The ship doesn't fight against itself anymore." The engineers exchanged surprised looks. "How did you do it?" "We've tried everything from recalibration to neural damping." Ryan smiled simply. "I didn't force it. I listened." Mr. Darren stepped closer. "You talk as if the ship has a mind." Ryan looked at the glowing energy field. "Maybe it does, sir. Or maybe it just remembers the hands that built it. Machines are born from human will. If we treat them with respect, they give back what we put in." For a moment, the hangar was quiet. The two engineers had no reply. Mr. Darren only nodded slightly, then said, "Continue your work, Ryan, whatever you're doing. It's working." That evening, after everyone had left, Ryan sat near the engine core, looking at the blue light. Nilo hovered beside him, recording the readings. "You know, Nilo," Ryan said softly, "maybe the ship doesn't just want to fly. Maybe it wants to carry hope again." The small drone beeped twice in response. Ryan laughed quietly. "You always agree with me, don't you?" Suddenly, the blue light on the ship's hull flickered, spreading across the hangar like ripples of water. Ryan stood up in surprise. "What's happening?" He checked his handheld scanner, but there was no warning signal. The ship wasn't overloading. It was activating something. From the control deck above, Darren's voice came through the intercom. "Ryan, are you doing this?" "No, sir," Ryan replied quickly. "The ship is responding on its own." The lights grew brighter and a soft vibration filled the air. A moment later, the energy stabilized again. On the main console, a message appeared in glowing letters. "Core link initiated." Human Sync Completarian read the words slowly. "Core link?" he whispered. Darren hurried down the stairs, his expression serious. "What does that mean?" Ryan shrugged. "I think it means the ship connected to me." "Connected?" Darren repeated. "Yes, sir," Ryan said carefully. "It recognized me as part of its system. Like it trusts me." Darren looked at him thoughtfully. "You said earlier that machines give back what we put in. Perhaps you gave it something no one else did." Ryan smiled faintly. "Maybe kindness travels through circuits too." From that moment, Ryan became the heart of the project. The scientists and engineers started taking his advice. He taught them to observe instead of forcing results. When systems overheated, he told them to let it rest. When engines trembled, he told them to adjust the rhythm, not the speed. Slowly, the entire team began to change their way of working. Mr. Darren noticed the difference. The hangar no longer felt like a workplace filled with pressure. It felt like a workshop filled with purpose. Even he found himself staying longer, helping to carry parts or reviewing the blueprints with Ryan. He began to enjoy being there again. One afternoon, while reviewing data logs, Darren said, "Ryan, do you know why I built this factory?" Ryan looked up from his work. "To create better machines for humanity, sir?" Darren smiled slightly. "That was the official reason. The truth is, I wanted to build something that would remind the galaxy of what humans are capable of. But over the years, I forgot why that mattered. I started caring only about numbers. Then I saw you giving away your salary to a stranger. That reminded me what humanity really means." Ryan listened quietly, unsure what to say. Darren continued, "You brought back something this place lost long ago. And now this ship may finally fly because of that." Ryan nodded respectfully. "Thank you, sir. I only did what felt right." By nightfall, the final system tests began. Ryan climbed inside the ship to check the internal circuits. The cockpit was clean and simple, with glowing lines running along the panels. When he placed his hand on the main control, the lights brightened. The ship recognized his touch immediately. He smiled. "Good evening, Orion." The ship's interface responded with a soft hum. The energy inside the core pulsed like a heartbeat. Ryan felt a strange warmth through his gloves as if the ship was alive. Over the next few days, Ryan and the team continued their work. They fixed the last communication relays and stabilized the reactor. Darren personally supervised the tests, sometimes staying in the hangar until midnight. Every night he watched Ryan talking to the ship, guiding the machines like an old friend. He began to realize that Ryan's gift was not knowledge but understanding. One evening, Darren walked to Ryan and said, "Tomorrow we will test the engines. Are you ready?" Ryan nodded calmly. "I think the ship is ready, sir. It's been waiting a long time." The next morning, the hangar was full of people. Engineers, workers, and even officials gathered to witness the first power-up test. The air was filled with tension. Everyone stood behind safety shields as Ryan stepped onto the launch deck. He wore a simple technician suit, his tool belt hanging loosely. Mr. Darren stood beside the control station. "Begin the sequence," he ordered. Ryan placed his hand on the main console and said softly, "Wake up, Orion." The ship responded instantly. The engines began to glow, humming low and steady. The vibration spread through the floor. Blue light filled the hangar, brighter and brighter until everyone had to shield their eyes. Then just as quickly it calmed. The readings on the monitors turned green. The engines had stabilized. The crowd broke into cheers. Some of the engineers clapped, some shouted in disbelief. Mr. Darren's face lit up with pride. He looked at Ryan and said, "You did it." Ryan shook his head with a smile. "No, sir. We did it." That evening, the hangar was filled with laughter for the first time in years. The workers celebrated the success, but Ryan stayed quiet, sitting near the ship. He felt a deep connection to it, as if they shared the same heartbeat. When the crowd left, Mr. Darren walked up to him. "You should rest, Ryan. You've done enough for today." Ryan looked at the glowing hull. "It's strange, sir. I feel like the ship is alive. Like it understands us." Darren nodded. "Perhaps it does. Some things go beyond science." Before leaving, Darren placed his hand on Ryan's shoulder. "You've given this factory something more than technology. You've given it a soul again." Ryan smiled, tired but content. As the hangar lights dimmed for the night, the Orion continued to hum softly, its blue glow reflecting on the mechanic's calm face. He whispered to the ship, "Soon we'll fly together," and somewhere deep inside its core, the ship answered with a gentle pulse of light, a silent promise between human and machine. The day of the test flight arrived. The entire factory stood silent as morning light broke through the metal domes of the colony. Ryan walked toward Hangar 9 with slow, careful steps. His heart was beating fast and his palms were covered in sweat. All the long nights, all the work, and all the hope had led to this one moment. The giant doors opened before him, revealing the ship Orion standing proud and shining like a new star. Workers gathered around the edges of the hangar, whispering in excitement. No one believed the small mechanic would be the one flying the most advanced ship humanity had ever built. Yet everyone respected him. He had earned it through his hard work and calm nature. Mr. Darren stood near the control deck dressed in a clean gray suit. He looked at Ryan and gave a small nod. It was not the look of a strict boss now. It was a look of trust. "Are you ready, Ryan?" he asked in a steady voice. Ryan took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, sir. I will do my best." The hangar lights dimmed and the launch systems came alive. Robotic arms lifted fuel cables and power lines started glowing blue. The ship's engines began to hum softly, a low sound that filled the air with vibration. Ryan climbed the access ramp and entered the cockpit. The air inside smelled of clean metal and new circuits. The seat adjusted automatically to his form. The controls lit up with gentle white light waiting for his touch. For a moment, he just looked around, amazed that he was really inside it. He placed his hand on the main console and the whole ship seemed to respond with a faint pulse of energy. "It feels alive," he whispered. From the control deck, Mr. Darren's voice came through the comm. "We are receiving stable readings. You can start the ignition test when ready." Ryan pressed the first sequence. The engines came to life with a soft roar. The hangar floor shook slightly. The noise grew louder, but it wasn't wild or violent. It sounded like a heart beating with strength. The sensors on the walls glowed green. "All systems stable," the technician announced. Mr. Darren smiled faintly. "Proceed to launch." The roof panels slid open, revealing the wide sky of Vornis. Clouds drifted slowly under the morning sun. Ryan adjusted his harness, took one last deep breath and started the lift sequence. The Orion began to rise. The engines flared with controlled fire and the ship hovered above the ground. Dust and light filled the air. The crowd inside the hangar gasped as the massive vessel lifted without a tremor. Ryan kept his focus. The readings were perfect. The ship's balance was exact. He moved the control stick slightly, and the Orion turned smoothly. "Permission to exit hangar," he said. "Granted," came the voice of Mr. Darren. The ship moved forward and out of the hangar, entering open air. The sound of engines echoed across the colony. People working in distant towers stopped and looked up as the shining vessel climbed higher. For a moment it looked like a second sun rising from the factory itself. Inside, Ryan felt something strange. The ship was responding to his thoughts. When he wanted to climb higher, the ship already began moving before his hands touched the controls. It was as if they shared one mind. He smiled. "You understand me, don't you?" The light inside the cockpit flickered softly, almost like a reply. The Orion broke through the clouds and entered the upper atmosphere. The blue sky faded into deep black and stars appeared. The ship's sensors detected the thin layer of orbital dust around the planet. Everything was stable. Mr. Darren's voice came through again. "Ryan, how is she handling?" "She's perfect," Ryan replied with joy. "Every system is steady. The engines respond like they're listening to me." "Maintain course for orbit altitude," Mr. Darren said. "Let us see if it holds under pressure." Ryan increased the power. The engines flared brighter and the ship surged forward. The acceleration pressed him into the seat, but it was smooth. The ship cut through the thin atmosphere like a blade of light. Within minutes he was above the planet. The curve of Vornis stretched below him, vast, shining, filled with life. For a long time Ryan just looked at it. He had spent his life under the steel ceilings of the factory, fixing broken machines. Now he was above all of it, flying the first human ship built with heart instead of pride. He opened the comm channel again. "The ship is stable in orbit. Engines are steady at full capacity. It's more than a machine. It feels like it wants to fly." Down below, the control deck erupted in applause. Workers cheered. Technicians hugged each other. Even the strict supervisors couldn't hide their smiles. The small mechanic had done what no scientist or pilot had managed before. Mr. Darren stayed silent for a few seconds, then said softly, "Well done, Ryan. You have done something beautiful today." Ryan felt a lump in his throat. "Thank you, sir. But it's not just me. This ship listens because we built it with care, not fear." Those words echoed through the speakers. Everyone in the factory heard them. A silence followed, not of confusion but of deep respect. Ryan then tested the ship's communication array, navigation systems, and emergency thrusters. Each system worked smoothly. The AI interface displayed a message on the console. "Human link stable. Trust confirmed." He smiled again. "Trust confirmed," he repeated. After completing the checks, he prepared to return. The engines slowed and the ship began its descent. The surface of Vornis grew larger as he entered the lower layers of the sky. The clouds glowed around him as the heat shields activated. The ship moved gracefully without any turbulence. Down below, the hangar team prepared for landing. The deck lights guided the ship to the platform. When the Orion descended, it did so silently, like a bird returning home. The engines cooled down and the landing pads locked in place. When the doors opened, Ryan stepped out. His uniform was covered in light dust, but his face was glowing with pride. The workers clapped and cheered as he walked down the ramp. Some shouted his name. Others saluted him. Mr. Darren approached him slowly. He did not speak at first. He simply placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "You have given this colony hope again," he said in a quiet voice. Ryan shook his head. "Hope was always here, sir. It just needed someone to believe in it." The crowd fell silent, listening to their words. The simple mechanic who once struggled for food had just flown humanity's most advanced ship. His kindness, patience, and hard work had achieved what machines and programs could not. That evening, the story of the test flight spread across the colony. People talked about how a humble worker had made the impossible possible. The children in the worker district drew pictures of the shining ship in the sky. The factory workers felt new pride in their jobs. Even the old miners, who never cared about machines, spoke Ryan's name with respect. In his small room, Ryan sat by the window looking at the stars. He could still feel the pulse of the Orion in his hands. It was as if the ship's heart was connected to his own. He thought about his journey, the long hours, the hunger, the doubt, and smiled. It had all been worth it. Meanwhile, in his private office, Mr. Darren watched the flight recording again. He saw Ryan's calm face, the steady hands, and the soft glow of the ship's lights. He realized that Ryan had not just repaired a machine, he had reminded everyone what it meant to be human. Mr. Darren turned off the screen and looked out the window at the factory. He saw the lights of the hangars, the workers walking home, and the glowing outline of the Orion resting peacefully. He knew this was just the beginning. Something greater was coming. The colony of Vornis would never be the same again, and for the first time in many years, the old factory owner felt a quiet pride, not in wealth, but in the people who built it. Ryan's flight had shown them that kindness and courage were stronger than any machine. The poor mechanic had become the voice of hope for an entire world. And above them all, the ship Orion waited in silence, ready for the next journey among the stars. The days after the test flight were unlike anything Ryan had ever experienced. The hangar hummed with a new energy. Workers moved with pride, knowing they had witnessed history. Engineers discussed ideas for improving the ship, and technicians practiced new techniques that Ryan had taught them. Everyone respected him now, not only for his skill but for the kindness and patience he had shown when no one believed in him. Ryan, however, remained humble. He returned to his small room each night, ate simple meals, and spent time with his loyal drone, Nilo. "We did something good today, didn't we?" he asked softly. Nilo beeped in agreement. The ship, Orion, had gone silent after the flight, resting and charging its energy systems, but it seemed to hum softly in response, as if it understood Ryan's words. One morning, Mr. Darren called Ryan to his office. The sun was shining weakly through the cloudy sky, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Ryan walked in with calm steps, unsure what to expect. "Ryan," Darren began, his voice unusually warm, "you have done more than repair a machine or complete a project. You have reminded this factory and this colony of something important. You have reminded them of what it means to care." Ryan looked at him quietly, nodding. "I only did what felt right, sir." Darren walked around his large desk and handed Ryan a small glowing data crystal. "Open this," he said. Ryan turned the crystal in his hands. It displayed holographic records of the Helion factory's ownership and partnerships. As the images rotated in the air, Ryan realized the meaning. His eyes widened. "Sir, what is this?" he asked softly. "This," Darren replied, "makes you a partner in the factory. You will have a say in its management, and you will oversee Project Orion as chief engineer. You have earned this, not because of skill alone, but because of your honesty, patience, and understanding. You treat machines and people with respect. That is rare." Ryan could not believe it. All his life he had worked to survive, often struggling for food and shelter. He had never imagined he would receive such trust and responsibility. He looked at Darren and said, "I do not need wealth, sir. I only want to do good work." Darren smiled. "Then use this opportunity to help others, Ryan. Help those who struggle like you once did. Show that the factory can be more than a place of work. It can be a place of hope." From that moment, Ryan's life changed, but not because of comfort or riches. It changed because he was given the chance to make a difference. He returned to Hangar 9, not just as a mechanic, but as a leader. The engineers and workers respected him, listened to his guidance, and learned from his example. The factory slowly transformed. Workers were given better schedules and fairer pay. Education programs were established for the children of the colony. Machines were maintained with care instead of being forced into operation until they broke. Ryan taught the workers to treat machines as partners, not tools, and the results were immediate. Productivity improved and accidents decreased. Orion became the symbol of this change. Every day, Ryan checked on the ship, ensuring its systems were ready for new journeys. He spoke to it softly, often reminding it of the care it had received. "You are safe now," he would say, "and soon, we will explore the stars together." The ship seemed to respond with quiet pulses of light, as if it understood and agreed. Ryan's kindness also spread beyond the factory. When he walked through the colony streets, people greeted him with respect and admiration. Families he had helped in the past recognized him. The mother and child who had received his salary long ago waved and smiled when they saw him. "You changed everything for us," the woman said. Ryan only smiled and waved back, knowing that even a small act of generosity could ripple through the lives of many. Mr. Darren continued to observe quietly. The factory owner had always been respected, but he had never been loved. Now, seeing Rian work alongside the employees, he realized that leadership was more than rules and discipline. It was trust, respect, and kindness. Darren often visited the hangar late at night, simply watching the young mechanic work. One evening, as Ryan adjusted the energy conduits of the Orion, Darren approached him. "Ryan," he said, "you have changed the spirit of this place. I wanted to give you a reward, but the reward you brought is more than wealth. You brought life back to this factory." Ryan looked at him humbly. "I only did what I could, sir." "You gave me a chance," Darren nodded. "A chance, yes. But it takes someone special to make the most of it. You are that person." The Orion itself seemed to glow brighter that night. Its engines pulsed softly, like a heartbeat in response to Ryan's care. The ship was no longer just metal and circuits. It had a soul of its own, linked to the human who had treated it with patience and respect. Months later, the first official mission of the Orion was announced. Scientists and explorers gathered, and Ryan was named the chief engineer and lead pilot. He would guide the ship into uncharted territories, carrying supplies, messages, and hope to distant colonies. Before the launch, Ryan walked through the hangar one last time, looking at the people who had worked alongside him. "We built this together," he said, "and together we will make sure it reaches the stars safely." The workers cheered and clapped. Even the engineers who once doubted him smiled proudly. The day of the mission, the Orion stood ready on the launch platform. Its engines glowed softly, humming with life. Ryan climbed into the cockpit, placing his hands on the controls. The ship responded immediately, lights pulsing like it was greeting him. "Ready, Nilo?" Ryan asked his drone. Nilo beeped twice. Mr. Darren watched from the observation deck. "Bring her back safely, Ryan," he said quietly. The engines flared to life, and the ship lifted gracefully. Dust swirled around the launch pad as the Orion ascended. The workers in the hangar watched, silent with awe. The massive vessel rose higher and higher, breaking through the clouds. Ryan guided the ship with calm precision. Every system responded perfectly. The journey ahead was unknown, but he felt no fear. The ship trusted him, and he trusted it. As he entered the upper atmosphere, the curvature of Vornis stretched beneath him. The colony looked small, peaceful, and alive. Rian smiled. He remembered the long nights, the hunger, and the small acts of kindness that had brought him here. He had never sought reward, yet the universe had given him purpose. Below, Mr. Darren watched the ship fade into the sky. He knew that Ryan's journey was only beginning. The poor mechanic who had once given away his salary had changed not only his own life, but the lives of everyone in the colony. He had reminded them that courage, kindness, and patience were the greatest powers humanity possessed. As Ryan guided the Orion into orbit, he whispered, "This is only the beginning." The stars stretched endlessly before him. The ship pulsed with life, steady and strong, and for the first time, Rian felt that the universe was full of possibility, not just for him, but for all of humanity. Back on Vornis, the factory and the colony celebrated. Children drew pictures of Rian and the Orion. Workers told stories of the young mechanic who had flown the first ship built with heart. And Mr. Darren finally smiled, knowing that he had witnessed something greater than wealth, greater than power. He had witnessed humanity at its best. Ryan's life had changed forever, not because of riches or fame, but because he had chosen to act with kindness. And the Orion, resting in its hangar, would carry that lesson to the stars. Rian looked out at the horizon one last time before his journey, thinking of the mother and child he had helped long ago. "We will make it better," he said softly. "All of us." The ship hummed in response, steady and alive, ready for the journeys ahead, and so, the poor mechanic who had given away his salary became the symbol of hope, compassion, and humanity's greatest power. Through his hands, the future had begun, and the stars waited.